What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Nick Schiffer podcast. As always, this podcast is brought to you by NS Builders. If you're looking to build a custom home or renovate a custom home in or around the Boston area, make sure you get in touch with us, www.nsbuilders.com. You can also shoot me a text, 617-799-7521. I look forward to talking with you guys. So this week, we want to answer a question that we got in our last Q&A on Instagram at NS Builders. What are your top value engineering hacks when budget creep sets in? This is a great question, and I want to start by kind of talking about what that conversation looks like. And, you know, we talked on the show before about our pre-construction process and how we want to be brought in early and help develop the budget, the schedule, the overall buildability or constructability of a project while the design is unfolding, so we can help navigate where that design goes. That way it's not necessarily getting to a point where so much time has been invested in the design that now when we get to a budget standpoint, we're in a position where it seems as though we're over budget or the architect is communicating something differently. With that being said, you know, there's still going to be these conversations that we have. We're going through it in multiple projects right now where the design is unfolding. We're getting further and further along, and we are repricing it kind of through that, you know, as design goes through, as we get another rendition of a design, we're going through another pricing rendition. And, you know, with that being said, we have projects that, okay, well, a lot more detail has come in. We understand what the finishes are. And finishes are a big driver to, overall cost per project, and we're going to be over budget. So we want to have a real conversation with the client, and as quickly as possible. And traditionally, we're not going to send that, say PDF budget over in an email. We're going to hop on a Zoom call and kind of walk through it because we want them to understand, what all of those line items mean. And, how it adds up. I always say it's a bunch of little numbers that add up to a really big one. And if you send that email or send that PDF through an email, they're going to just scroll down and say, oh my gosh, they're, $200,000 over budget. This is insane. Like, how did it get to there? Where it's like, if you take the other approach and you walk through it, you can kind of show how things have added up over time. Now, the purpose of this conversation, even though we know we're going to be over budget, is to just kind of set the stage. And we want to talk about this really up front in the beginning of the conversation and explain, like, listen, this is a development. This is a development process where, we're still working through pricing. We're still waiting on some of our trade partners to get back to us with pricing. And just overall, this is a work in progress. But we wanted to show you where things are trending so we can make some of these micro adjustments now rather than continuing to go down the path or continuing to go down pricing, maybe having allowances that might be too large. Maybe we have $20 a square foot for tile when everything they've looked at is less than, $10 a square foot. So we want to make sure we have this conversation, but we want to go in there and explain that this is in progress. And I don't, there may be sticker shock, but I don't want the client to feel as though that the project is a loss at this point, because that's not what it is. It's really about getting to the understanding of where we're trending and then how we can, trend in the opposite direction. So we walk through the line items and we start talking about fixtures and finishes and the construction process and things that are driving the cost. And, we're going to show that bottom number and it's going to be over budget. And at that point, we want to look at all of those line items. And, one trick that a friend of mine taught me is, just to see what it would take. I take that spreadsheet and all those line items and say it's $100,000 at the bottom and I want it to be $80,000. Well, I'll take those numbers and then basically reverse calculate what each of those numbers would have to be reduced by per a percentage to add up to my lesser amount. And then I can go back and look at, all right, if that number right now is 5,000, but if it was 4,880, that would be, that would help me trend towards the right direction. And doing that, it kind of gives me this check and balance. It's like, yeah, you know what? I have $5,000 as an allowance, but maybe I can get that number down to 4,880. And that's going to be my process first off, just to see like, if we were to take the same amount from or the same percentage from every line item, could we get down to that point, and is that realistic? The likelihood is probably not. Some items you can steal away from. Some items are probably hard fixed. Some you can probably steal away more from. With all that being said, the question is, what are some of our value engineering hacks? And there's not necessarily, I guess there's a lot of things, but the general gist of the way we value engineer things is to think more creatively. Now, for me, and just a little bit about my business and what my role is here is I'm on the bottom line, meaning I'm in the overhead. That's how I'm billed out. I'm part of that process through and through. So I don't mind putting a lot of time and effort into kind of overthinking and analyzing how we approach something and being more creative and trying to find creative solutions to something rather than just looking at the way something's designed and going for it. We're in this process right now about talking about our flush baseboard detail, which we've done on multiple projects now. We've done it a handful of different ways, and they've all net slightly different results. But, we have another project that they would really love to do it, but, the way that we did it on one particular project, it was very labor intensive. So now we look at that and say, all right, what worked in that process? Is there anything we could have simplified? Could we go back and change something? What if we were to do something in a different order? We're going to look at things more creatively and challenge the way things are done. And that's what I really instill in everyone here, is that I want you to have the opportunity to challenge what we're doing. And that doesn't always have to be like, hey, let's frame this wall. All right, well, I want to challenge that. It's more about if you feel as though there's a better way to do it, or if you look at design and realize, I have a great example. We have a project right now that when you walk into the space, some of the first things that you see are the HVAC registers. And it's been driving me crazy. I see it on the renderings, I see it on the drawings, and it works. And we're going to use amazing plastered in HVAC registers. They're going to look great. But I keep walking into this space and I keep thinking to myself, I want to challenge this. I don't want to see the registers. How can we hide the HVAC? And, I'll give it to my, this guy, Brent Buck on Instagram. I follow and I've chatted with him. He always really details these really great HVAC, output designs, meaning that they're kind of integrated into the architectural element. So it doesn't necessarily look like a register. It might be a reveal. And, I've brought it up and I've been shut down multiple times. And I brought it up the other day with, just my team, and we started talking, and I kind of started walking through like, what if we did this? And what if we did this? And what if we did that? And, in doing so, my team started thinking about, well, okay, I get what you're trying to do, but what if we did it here instead? And at the end of that, this half-hour discussion on site, we came up with a really great solution, all the way to the point where we're sketching on the whiteboard of, hey, rather than registers, what if it comes out of the top of the wall and ends up where it dies into this steel beam? And since we don't want to plaster tight to the steel beam anyway, we could use that reveal to allow the air to disperse out evenly, and we would do so in a manner that it wouldn't have this rushing air sound. Great. Like that's what this is all about. It's about challenging it. And now, I realize I'm not talking about value engineering. I'm actually making something more complicated. But it's the same thing, when we're looking at design and, budget is a concern, there's always things that can be value engineered. Whether it's, we look at the big items, windows are a huge item. Are we able to use a different brand window? What's driving the cost of that window? What's driving the decision to use that window? Is it a performance spec, or is it just the aesthetic of it? Can we achieve a similar performance or aesthetic with a different company? Okay, if we can, does that, what about warranty? What are the benefits? Framing's obviously one that, is there simpler ways to frame it? We talk about panelization a lot, and, and building the stuff in the shop. Is there a cost savings to it? Maybe the cost is the same, but it will save us time. And on the back end, time is money because we're not managing a project for as long. So, looking at all of the processes and really understanding, is it the best way to approach it, or are there better ways? And having an open conversation with your team and allowing that kind of fluidity in that conversation allows for a really interesting dialogue and a really interesting approach to a lot of things that, we kind of just become, it's almost like it's just automatic. Like we're just going through the motion where it's, we haven't stopped and kind of checked ourselves and said, I've been doing this for X amount of years. Like, could I improve upon it? I want to add to this because the other side of value engineering a project is talking with your trade partners, your subcontractors, and having a real conversation about it. You say you're working with the same plumber year after year, and you get into these kind of grooves of things that you like. I always like to use copper, or I always like to prep for the future, or I always like there, or even the electrician, hey, I would prefer to use this recessed light. All of those micro decisions that you make year after year and job after job almost become standard. And when that electrician might come on your site, and use that recessed light, and the budget's high, and you realize that the recessed light is 4 times as much as a different one that would work and it would be aesthetically pleasing, there's an opportunity there that you could save costs. And the way to approach that is, talk to the electrician. Hey, listen, we're trying to cut the costs on this project. We're trying to value engineer a couple things. Is there anything on your end that would help? And just having that honest conversation and being transparent and upfront about your intention, where, oftentimes I have the conversation and we'll say, listen, trying to cut costs on this project, trying to get the budget to XYZ. Is there anything within your scope that you're assuming that I can help answer? Maybe there's a lighting allowance that they're assuming. Oh, you have $20,000. I can get you a lighting allowance, and maybe it's only, or lighting specifications, and we can nail down that cost, and that might save some money there. Or, yeah, I'm assuming, maybe the painter. Well, I'm assuming that I'm going to be there 3 times because based on the last couple of projects, we had to kind of phase in and out of that project. But if you could guarantee that I had the space to myself, I could cut that cost by 20%. There's that open dialogue that has to happen between you and your subs and your trade partners, because oftentimes those assumptions are being made based on the experience that they've had with you elsewhere. And, and working together and with a common goal is really important, just like it's important to work with the architect and the homeowner, and, all the way back to pre-construction. So again, another show that comes down to communication and really just being upfront and honest with the intention, and creativity, and looking at the way you approach things and the way that you build things, and understand, is there areas for us to improve upon this, whether it's efficiency or cost or the type of material, and inevitably allowing you to value engineer a project. So I hope that question was answered the way that you were intending. If you guys have a question for a future episode, make sure you leave it in the comments below here on YouTube. Shoot me a DM on Instagram, or Doug a DM at NSB Video, and we will see you guys next week.